with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Ruff. And Rich, we got an incredible show. Absolutely incredible show. Lots to go over. But, we've been talking, and we talked a lot last week, about the trade war and what's going on with the trade war, what's going on in China, in this roller coaster we're on. And the market was getting slammed. I mean, it was absolutely tanking at the time. And it's amazing what a week can do. And
no, it's amazing what a word can do. Words are tanking the market.
The words
are tanking.
In a press release to say, hey, we're going to talk. And now, can you believe it, that the market is way up? It's at a 1 month high, and it's already, the market's performing very well, so that's actually very good. And it's only 2%, less than 2% actually, off of its all-time high. And despite, the tariffs actually taking place, it wasn't like they were threatened. I think with President Trump, now that he doesn't threaten. It's going to happen, and he's not backing down.
No, that's one thing about him. He doesn't back down, and if he believes in something, he's going to move forward with it. That's just the way it is.
And amazing, too, that the president came out this week, and I think there's truth to this. He said that the market would be 10,000 points higher without the trade war. So, he truly realizes that, this is hurting the market, and it could be performing so much better if we weren't going through this. But he believes that if we don't go through this, this is the time. This is a life and death struggle. If not now, then when? And if we go back to the old way of doing things, it's just going to progressively get worse. And he's the guy to rise up to the challenge and get this thing done. But imagine, Rich, if he does get a deal, what's going to happen with the market?
Well, what's going to happen with the market is going to be Christmas. It's unbelievable. The point of the thing that really intrigues me is his determination. The fact that he could say, hey, we could be 10,000 higher if we weren't doing a trade war, but I think it's worth it. I think it's important. If not now, when? So I just think he's one of the most determined presidents I've ever seen.
And I think he's going to run on the market, and I believe that's, in his back pocket right now, what it could be. But where is the president at right now with the approval ratings? And you keep seeing these low 40s, and, it doesn't matter what the guy does. It's in the low 40s. It's almost a foregone conclusion. Rasmussen comes out, and he's like at 50, right? But everybody else is at 40. That's a big... That's huge. And, are these polls reliable? And a great American, a guy that I know, someone who I read his stuff all the time. I've been so fortunate to be published by his media group, Newsmax. And I'm on Newsmax all the time. That's where I go to get my news, newsmax.com. But he's also now television, and so many great personalities are now on Newsmax TV. Absolutely tremendously successful in the media, a great voice for our nation. And he's just published a wonderful piece that explains this whole poll drama that's going on. We're very pleased to have with us Christopher Ruddy, CEO of Newsmax Media, which includes Newsmax.com and Newsmax TV. You could watch him. You could see him actually talk about this if you want to refer back to it. Why are these polls not right? Welcome to Made in America, Chris.
Neil, thanks for having me on. It's an honor.
So we're really pumped up here, and we're always jazzed up every week and watching what's going on in our country, and it really gets our hearts going, and so much important things are going on, and people are going to make a big decision here in another year and a few months' time. And a lot of us are watching these polls, and they just seem to be stuck in the low 40s. But you dug into this, and you've come up with some real facts and fact-based analysis on why these polls are likely wrong, and the president should be polling at 48, 50, or maybe even above 50%. Can you tell us about your research and what you discovered?
I think I've had the experience you and many of your listeners have had, like why the president has all these accomplishments, the greatest economy in modern times, basically, record unemployment all across the board, great stock market, and yet he's always stuck on national polls at about 42%. And it's a little frustrating, I'm sure, for him, and certainly for people that support him like myself and like you. But you start asking yourself, is there something wrong with these polls? And first off, I started looking at this, and I discovered that most of these polls are registered voter polls. They're not polls of likely voters, which they usually do around Election Day. So one of the president's pollsters said to me the president usually does 4 or 5 points better with likely voters, that people are actually going to come out to vote. Democrats are known for really building up their voter registration and not showing up to vote. And the Republicans are a little more diligent in that, especially off election years. So the president has a very motivated base, for instance. Maybe they're more motivated to turn up than his critics. Certainly, I think we saw that in 2016. So I looked at it. All of these polls are registered voters. If you now did at 42% approval with a registered voter group, if it was likely, it might be at 47, 48%. So you're very close to the 50 mark. And then add in another wrinkle, Neil, which is that they're oversampling Democratic voters. And the president says this, so I started looking at the data. And the most recent Reuters poll, which had the president at 42, they had, of the 961 people they surveyed, 47% were Democrats. 38% were Republicans. So they gave Democratic survey respondents 9 percentage points more than Republicans. And you could say, well, they vote more often, or they're a larger bloc in the country. The only problem is that the data shows that there's maybe a 3 to 4 point edge of Democratic voters over Republican in the country. So they're doubling the amount of the margin in favor of the Democrats. And that will have a huge impact on any poll result. Any pollster will tell you that. And that's why I think the president is over 50%.
You know, Chris, let me ask you, this is Rich. Good to have you on the show, by the way. If you think about it, what did the polls really mean in 2016? I mean, right up until 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the night of the election, the polls were saying it's impossible, can't happen. All the talking heads were coming through on the channel saying it can't happen. And the reality of it is the polls were points and points and points off from the reality of where they needed to be. So do the people out there, Chris, really believe the national polls, given the fact they know that the national media, with the exception of a handful, are so prejudiced against this president?
Well, Rich, a really good point you make. First off, there is one poll that's been pretty consistent, was accurate in 2016, the Rasmussen poll, and they typically show the president with about a 50% approval rating, closer to the number I'm suggesting. So that's just for starters. I think that the people that are reading the polls very carefully are the Democrats that want to be president, or that were thinking about running for president. If they thought the president was very weak in their numbers, you would have seen some really heavyweight Democrats come out. They have a lot of fringe candidates running. They really have people on the far left, people certainly not qualified to be president. The mayor of South Bend, Indiana, for instance, and a business guy here and there. I mean, it's sort of a joke field, let's just say that. And they had to bring Joe Biden out of retirement, essentially. He's almost 80 to run, and he's considered the heavyweight. And I think the Democrats that are in Washington read the polls, and they know that these polls are understating the president's support. And that's what's scaring a lot of them off. So the truth is that the insiders know the facts, even though the people out in America might be, some of them be skewed by the stuff they're hearing from the big media that the president has low ratings.
But Chris, aren't these pollsters who are progressives and liberals, obviously, a lot of these polls coming out it's basically predictions of what they want it to be, not the reality of what it is. But aren't they doing their constituents a disservice? Because, I mean, if you're a Democrat now and you see that President Trump is losing to Biden by 12 points or whatever it is, oh, well, I don't have to go to vote. I mean, this guy, he's toast, They got this false sense of security that he's losing and he's losing big. So, it's going to be, it's counterintuitive, but these polls are actually hurting the people who want to see the president defeated.
It's not helpful and hurts his image and hurts his standing and maybe creates a sense that he is in low numbers and that other people should feel negative about him. I've always said with this president, you got to look at the results. Whether you like what he tweets or not, that's really, debatable, and it's an issue that, concerns people. But what is the president supporting a strong economy? Is he supporting a strong military and security and national security defense? And I think on those issues, he's doing a good job. And then when you add up the reform issues, cleaning up Washington, draining the swamp, massive deregulation, I think he's doing a good job. And then you see the trade issues. I think he's doing a really good job by holding China accountable. He wants to rebalance trade. So generally, the exit poll out of the 2016 election, or a number of recent polls, they'll ask people, what do you think the president's doing well? And invariably they say he's handling the economy well.
Hey, Chris, we're going to take a quick break. We're on with Chris Ruddy, who's the CEO of Newsmax Media. A great conversation. We still have some important topics to cover. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're on with Chris Ruddy, who's the CEO of Newsmax Media. That's where I go to get my news. I'm on the site 4 or 5 times a day, maybe more. A great place to go and read and see all types of opinions, not just on politics, but finance and many, many other topics. That's going to be very interesting to you. Chris is the one who put it all together, and it's really blossomed and it's really grown. And if you go there and seen the contributors and the people who are writing and speaking and on Newsmax TV and the distribution of Newsmax TV and what's happened with that, it's absolutely amazing. A great place for Americans to go to get their news and to kind of hone in on their thoughts. So, Chris, you're with the president a lot, and I love to see that, and you travel with him, and you're around him a lot, and you see him up close. I mean, a lot of us, we don't have that luxury. We don't have that privilege. He's gotten attacked, and you brought it up so much. I mean, he's gotten attacked so unfairly in all of the fake stuff that comes out, and just these attacks, ruthless attacks, just relentless over and over again. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. Just hit the guy every which way you can. So my question to you is, any normal person, it would just over time just wear you down. But it doesn't seem to happen with this president, with Donald Trump. He seems to get energized from it. So how does he deal with that?
Well, look, he's a guy that likes controversy, likes fighting. He's a fighter, and so he enjoys. He's ready for battle. And he has been, very strong, and he's not afraid of these guys. So he, when I do see him in person, I think he's not like wild. He's not angry. He's just him. He's Donald Trump, very friendly guy, very affable. The media likes to take a few clips where he's saying something strong and blow it out of proportion, or something sometimes that he might be saying rather facetiously or funny, and try to make it seem like he's being serious or what have you. But at the end of the day, I think the public knows his persona is a little different. They know he's not a politician. They're willing to accept him for who he is.
Who does he have any, like you brought up about the Democrat primary, and it's a lot of fringe candidates. I mean, you personally, do you see a big threat there who's someone who you kind of lose sleep over?
Well, I don't think any of the current field can defeat Donald Trump. So I'm not losing sleep over anyone. I don't think he thinks that any of the candidates can defeat him.
Elizabeth Warren, she's pretty articulate. I mean, she's coming across in the debates of having some real policy there, and all the free stuff.
Yeah, except for the problem that with all the free stuff and all the leftist ideas, she can't pull in regular America. She cannot pull in middle America. She can pull in the coast. She will not pull in those who are in the flyover states. She's just not going to do that. What do you think, Chris?
I think that she came out in the debate and said she wants to abolish all private health care in the United States. And do you want your private insurance to be abolished on a government program? Do you want your health insurance to be run like the post office? I don't think so. I think that, she's got some real issues, and she's probably the real front runner after Biden. So she's got a sort of radical positioning on a number of things. So she wants to pay off everybody's student loan in the country. That's $1.3 trillion. I don't think that would be a sensible thing. I do think student loans need to be relieved in some way, reformed, fixed. But to just pay off everybody's loans, I think would be unfair for all the people that have paid off their loans, that worked 2 or 3 jobs to do it, or did so over many years.
I think with all of the stuff going on in these debates, why would you pay any student debt right now? Why would you pay any medical bills right now? They're going to just, they're going to forgive all medical debt. They're going to forgive all education debt. Why would you pay anything? But Chris, in the short period of time that we have left, what is the future of Newsmax and Newsmax TV, which is, which is doing incredibly well?
Yeah, the president says we need a new news channel, cable news channel, and he's tired of Fox. We all know Fox is changing. It's got a lot more liberal hosts, a lot more critics of the president. Newsmax TV is booming. We're on every major cable system around the country. Just Comcast, Xfinity. We're on DirecTV, Dish, Fios, Uverse, Charter Spectrum. Even Cox is going to be putting us on soon. Optimum, Suddenlink. Just look up your channel guide for Newsmax TV. You'll find us. Go to newsmaxtv.com. You can find us there. We'll link to the different cable channels. We're having people like Bill O'Reilly's on several times a week. Mike Huckabee now has a show several times a week. Michelle Malkin. Alan Dershowitz comes on all the time. A lot of the people you might be familiar with Fox, but I think we're more fair and balanced with the president getting his point of view out that the media isn't telling, and we're booming, and we're in 70 million cable homes. And people can, as I said, look us up online, newsmaxtv.com. But I think it's the future, and it's really important the country not rely just on Fox News going forward.
Absolutely incredible, and I've been there, from the very beginning. And you've published a lot of my pieces, and it was a very different Newsmax than it is today. And I've witnessed it as an insider in writing for you, and it's just absolutely amazing. Well done, and very much needed in our country. Chris, you're doing an incredible job. God bless you, and keep it up. Keep up the good fight. We need you. We need you very much.
You too, Neal and Rich. Thank you for having me on, and God bless your work, and let's keep in touch.
Thanks. Chris Ruddy, CEO of Newsmax Media. Hey, Rich, we got a great discussion coming up about one of your favorite people, Mayor De Blasio. We're going to have a discussion about him. And there's a piece published in The Hill by Gene Marks from the Marks Group, Mayor De Blasio, the small business killer. We're going to discuss that next. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neal Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. It was so wonderful to have Chris Ruddy on the show. I mean, it was really great. I mean, very articulate, very smart. I mean, if you see the guy and what he's done in his education and the things he's done in Newsmax and how that's basically, mushroomed into this massive media organization. And it's happened quickly because, as I said, I started writing for them at the very beginning. and it wasn't anywhere near what they are today.
You were knocking out a piece every week.
Every week. And I did it for a few years. And so, I've published a lot of pieces. In fact, if you go there and you look at the insiders, and you'll see every piece that I've wrote is archived there. But he's given a lot of writers, writers such as myself, that would not have a voice otherwise if there wasn't for Newsmax. I mean, so it's not just about him and all the work that he does and what he did with the polls just recently and tearing that apart, but giving voice to a lot of great people that otherwise would not have a voice.
Well, it's also, I would think, it's also the confluence of Donald Trump becoming the president of the United States.
That's not hurt.
No. But the point is that, we said many years ago we need somebody to come in on the horse and be the Lone Ranger, so to speak, and save the day. And we need somebody outside the system. So Trump comes along and he fits the bill. And I predicted for sure on many of our shows that he would win the election. And he did. But at the same time that happened, the entire media landscape changed. And we need somebody to get back on that horse and be the next Lone Ranger and do that in media. And Chris fits that bill. He gives exactly what you just said, another wheelhouse for guys like us and you with all your writing and all the books that you write, Neal, an opportunity to get that voice out there because we have a lot of starved people that want to hear it. That's Excellent. What Chris Ruddy's doing.
Well said.
You like that?
I thought that
went well.
I hope he listened to that.
I hope he did, too. Yeah.
Hey, look, Rich, you grew up in New York City. I grew up across the river in the great state of New Jersey. And we love New York. We both love New York. I mean, the metropolitan New York area and the city. And it just kills me when you got a mayor like De Blasio. I mean, absolutely insane guy, a real fringe guy. And not only is he not satisfied with taking on the police, the people in uniform who are out there keeping that city safe, and that's no small task, making their job so much harder, and then, creating problems for them when they're trying to do their jobs and they're in very dangerous situations. But small businesses and the things that he is doing to small businesses, and if the Democrat or any of the Democrats, I don't care which one, I don't care if Bill Clinton was a nominee and he eventually gets elected president, the platform of the Democrats have gone so far left. This is bad news for the American entrepreneur, bad news for small businesses, inventors, risk takers, all those folks who create our jobs and keep us safe and keep us prosperous. Because after all, it's all those tax dollars that go into the U.S. Treasury that pays for our military and keeps us safe, right? So if you break that chain, it's very, very ugly, very, very fast. Our next guest, Gene Marks, from the Marks Group, published a piece in The Hill, and he's publishing all the time. And we're talking about the piece that he just recently did in The Hill, called, and it's entitled, Mayor De Blasio, the Small Business Killer. Now, Rich, that is very direct. That is very direct.
I think it's stop right there. He just defined it. He is the business killer.
You could put that.
He's a city killer.
You could put that on a trucker's hat, and you would know exactly what the Democrats will do. We're very pleased to have with us right now Gene Marks. Gene, welcome to Made in America.
Having me on, I appreciate it. I'm sorry to hear that you're from the New York area, both of you, because I'm down the road in Philly. So we're not going to get into a Mets-Phillies conversation during this segment, okay?
No, I'll give your number to my wife. She's from Philly.
But, Gene, I have a manufacturing company that I have several hundred employees in Avondale, Pennsylvania, just a little bit south of you. So I love both places very well. I'm very conflicted.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's funny, too. I mean, being in Philadelphia, we're just, a stone's throw from New York, and I have a lot of clients in the New York area. And I have to tell you guys, I go into New York, frequently. And I got to shake my head when I visit clients there. This is in all the boroughs in New York City. It is really tough to run a small business in New York City. I mean, I have employees and I'm based in Philly, and thank God I'm not running a business in New York. It's become tougher and tougher to make a profit and to even sustain. And we're seeing a lot of businesses shut down and move locations. And the reason, why, which is what prompted me to write that piece for The Hill, is that it really is De Blasio and his policies that are driving so many businesses out of that city. And just to give you some examples, I mean, if you're a small business in New York City, you're faced now with mandated paid sick time that you have to provide to your employees, mandated family leave, mandated paid time off. You have to tell your employees in advance, at least a week in advance, when you're scheduling time for them, because God forbid if a schedule should change, because, gee, things always go to plan when you're running a business, right? Minimum
Absolutely.
wages, they're now scheduled to go up to $15 an hour next year. There are new regulations for lactation in the workplace, anti-harassment rules, and this is my favorite. There's now, starting in 2021, a congestion, pricing toll where, people coming into the city, particularly truckers, are going to be paying somewhere around $14 an hour, extra as a toll to come into Manhattan, particularly lower Manhattan. So if you're a business there, and you're trying to accept deliveries and do business there, you're now facing with suppliers that are going to be more reluctant to come and deliver to you because they're going to have added costs as well. All of these things has added up. And then just recently, as I'm doing this research for this article and considering what the impact is, suddenly it comes to my attention about real estate property taxes in New York have increased 72% since 2009. I mean, the average real estate property tax that's paid by a typical small merchant has increased from $46,000 to almost $79,000 in just the past, 7 or 8 years. I mean, that's $6,500 a month just for taxes.
Is that just for a small little shop? That's what the real estate taxes are?
Yeah, that is what it is on average for merchants across New York City. Obviously, some people will pay more and some people are paying less, but all of these things are adding up to what the Gothamist, which is a local New York publication, is calling a vacancy crisis. As more and more small businesses in all the boroughs they're fleeing New York City, and they're taking jobs with them. And when I talk about this stuff online, I get a lot of people saying, well, these businesses should take care of their employees and they should do the right thing, and they should provide paid time off and sick time and all of that. And I agree. Smart business owners do that. And smart people that are trying to grow their companies or run a nice business, we understand the importance of our employees, but having the government mandate us to do that, particularly if we're just not in a financial position to afford it, it's going to make us leave, or it's going to make us go out of business. And then those same employees that are crying for more time off or flexible scheduling, they don't have a job at all. So this is what it's all coming down to, and it's a bad situation.
Gene, we're going to take a quick break. We're on with Gene Marks from the Marks Group, and he's got a piece in The Hill, Mayor De Blasio, the small business killer. We're going to continue to talk about that, but many, many more things to talk about. Stay with us. You don't want to miss it. Dr. Rothman is dying to get into this conversation.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we're joined with Gene Marks from the Marks Group. We're talking about small businesses in New York City being forced out of town. They just can't afford to be there. Just overregulated, cost escalating. They can't increase the cost of their services to their customers. How do you balance that? Many of them cannot, and they leave town. Rich, you grew up in New York. What do you feel?
Well, I grew up in New York, and we actually had, when I was a kid, I remember Mayor Robert Wagner.
Wow.
Well,
that's a
what
blast
I said
from the
when
past.
It's a blast from the past. But he was very pro-business. He worked well with the unions, which means he probably worked well with the mob. But we had really good mayors along the way. I'm not so sure about Dinkins being a great mayor, but certainly Giuliani came in and he understood what needed to be done to save the city. It seems like we've taken 3 decades back steps as it relates to what's happening with De Blasio. But Gene, I mean, here we have a lame duck mayor. I mean, he's done. This is his last year of his last term. Am I right on that? Did I get that right?
It is, and he is.
So he doesn't care, does he? He's gone. There's nothing you can do to him.
He's certainly behaving like one. He's been in office something like, one day over the past few months. He's out campaigning.
Yeah, Gene, you're right.
He's really not running the city.
He's been in the last month, and it's all over the internet. Pick any of them, Fox, whatever, Washington Examiner. 7 hours of work in the month since he launched his presidential bid. I mean, that's just bloody outrageous that he's not there. You have one of the highest unemployment, homelessness rather, on the streets of New York in the entire country, at least on the East Coast. And he's not there to deal with this. This is so contrary to anything Giuliani did to clean up that city and make it thrive, which, by the way, is great for business.
Couldn't agree with you more. And just so when you run a business in New York, I mean, listen, there's a lot of opportunity in New York City, and if you can make it there, they say you can make it anywhere. But
Thanks, Frank.
It's a competitive landscape, and there are a lot of people fighting over the same amount of customers. And when you start throwing in some of these added costs on businesses, look, the large companies can handle this, smaller companies can't. And De Blasio, and not just him, but his city council, they drive away employers like Amazon. They raise, wages, minimum wages and requirements for small businesses that are struggling. It's a very, very difficult place to do business right now, which provides a lot of opportunity for, Republican contenders in the next mayoral election. I know they're going to get the small business vote, that's for sure.
So, Gene, to change gears a little bit, let's talk about China and what's going on with our trade war with China. And, the market seems to have taken a big dive a week ago. But, with a couple of press releases, it looks like the market is at least feeling like they're talking and maybe something's going to happen. I think President Trump even said himself that the market would be up 10,000 points if it wasn't for the trade war. I mean, if the market was up 10,000 points, there's no way that he would ever lose re-election. It's like over with. I mean, if he's able to accomplish that, he thinks he can. If the trade war was settled, there's also a lot of headwinds against a deal getting done. Where do you stand on this? What do you see?
Oh, well, guys, here's what I see, and definitely feet on the ground here. My company does technology services. We have about 600 active clients around the country, and I deal with and speak to and write for thousands of other small business owners. And guys, I have to tell you something. I mean, for decades, my clients, people that run small businesses that have been doing business with China, have complained bitterly about the unfair trading landscape that there is between the U.S. and China, bitterly about the tariffs, about the stealing of technology, about the requirements of having Chinese quote-unquote partners, about their currency manipulations, about the dumping of products and the government behind Chinese suppliers that's propping up their prices so they can undercut American businesses. This has been going on for decades. And finally, there is a president in office right now who is willing to stand up and fight for this. And China, by some aspects, are a bigger economy now than the U.S. and surely are expected to be a bigger economy sometime in our lifetimes. And if we don't have this battle now, we are going to lose it forever for our kids and our grandkids. And that is the sentiment of the business owners that I talk to. And, one other thing, listen, the average age of the U.S. small business owner is about 52 years old. And many of us, most of us in our generation, we have not had wars, for goodness sake. We have not gone through the pain and suffering that our grandparents did. This is a war, and thank God nobody is dying because of this war. But sure, there's going to be some pain and suffering in a war. And if that means paying a few dollars extra for an iPhone, for God's sake, so that we can get our trade balance together and come to some agreement with China, I see most, if not all, of my business clients, they're willing to put up with a lot more pain to get this thing done. And I think the president knows that too.
Hey, Gene, thanks for being on the show. I mean, the two great conversations on De Blasio and then something very different on China. Very, very articulate, very clear. We love your voice. Thanks for being on their show, and do come back. Gene Marks from the Marks Group.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neal Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. Rich, I can't believe that the time has just flown by, but we've had some really, really great discussions today. But to pick up from where we just left off about Americans making sacrifice. Now, we talk about the greatest generation, right? And we talk about that sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And, after that, there was the Korean War. And let me tell you, you watch what the American soldier went through in the Korean War. I mean, it was really, really hard.
Oh, it was horrible there. Horrible.
My father fought in the Korean War.
Yeah.
And, that war, I mean, it doesn't get the publicity like World War II, but it was nasty and a lot of sacrifice. And then the Vietnam War, something much more contemporary for us. And how these brave soldiers went over there. And they fought because that's what they were told that they had to do, to fight for democracy, to fight for freedom, to prevent the domino theory,
the domino effect, exactly,
of these countries falling to communism. First it was Vietnam, then Laos and Cambodia and Thailand and Malaysia and the Philippines and Indonesia. It would just be all communist. And these men went over there, and they suffered, and they fought, and so many did not come home. 52,000 Americans did not come home. And then once they got home, but
they were treated horribly. They were treated horribly. They were spit on. Horrible.
Horrible. And think about the sacrifice of that generation. We don't talk about it, but they were so mistreated after sacrificing so much and coming home to that sort of reception. Absolutely terrible. A very sad part of American history. So now you get to the trade war, and we use the word war, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War. Now we're in a trade war. And, where's the sacrifice? So Gene just talked about, are Americans willing to sacrifice in a trade war for the good of the country? And, that's a big struggle because I don't think a lot of people see it in those terms.
No, they don't. And it really upsets me, by the way. And I'm glad Gene brought that up. That, listen to any of the talk news hosts on Business Talk.
Well, what is it? It's always Trump's trade war. It's Trump's trade war.
It's almost as if
it's Trump's trade war. I mean, without Trump, there would be no trade war.
It's not China's fault. Evidently, they're saying it's Trump's fault.
As if it's his fault. In that he created this war for his own purpose.
Which has been going on for over 30 years. They've been stealing intellectual property.
So everybody can stay in a Trump hotel.
So,
right?
Exactly. That's another whole story. We're going to talk about that. But seriously thinking, that generation you just spoke about, and all those other generations, sacrifice, actually going back to the Revolutionary War, what men and women, mostly men in those days, sacrificed. And I am sure my father, who fought in World War II and actually was gone for 4.5 years, really wanted to come home and stop the sacrifice. He's a Depression child, too, but he did it because he believed in his country. He didn't get drafted. He signed up. And when I hear people say, well, I don't know, it may cost me $150 more to buy an iPhone, so what? So what? So it costs you $150 more, and you're doing something to protect the rights of this country and the equality of trade on a global basis and stop the enemy of this country, which is China, from stealing jobs from us, money from us, a better life for our folks over here, maybe getting people off the streets. Better yet, Neal, stopping the production of fentanyl, which is killing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people every year in the United States with a Chinese pharmaceutical product. So is it worth maybe $1,000 more for a car? I'd pay it any day of the week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very touchy situation. Americans, though, vote with their pocketbooks. You've heard that a lot. Tabletop issues, sitting there at home, trying to divvy up the dollars in order to live your life. And costs, prices, very sensitive, very, very sensitive for Americans. We're going to hear a lot more about it because I don't think this is going away. As Gene said, we're going to be in this for a while. But I just got to get to this really, really quickly about the CNN debate. And we just got a few moments left. But Cory Booker says that veganism, it's all about veganism.
That's right.
We all got to become vegans now.
Mm-hmm. Well, he knows better. He said everyone should be a vegan.
Because beef and meats are the cause of global warming.
Global warming. Climate change, it's all caused because we have cows.
Now, connect the dots. Unbelievable. Unfortunately, Rich, we're
out
going to
of
have
time.
to end it there.
Yep.
Boy, this is a topsy-turvy world. But, Rich, wonderful to be with you. Great, great show. But don't be sad because we're going to be on again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.